Are you wondering if you should open spotlight caches for Annihilus this week? Are you wondering if you should spend tokens on Annihilus this week? Are you also wondering what sort of decks should you put Annihilus in? This video is going to talk about all three of those topics. We're going to look at the card, we're going to look at some decks that could easily be good for him on day one, and conclude, should you be opening for Annihilus or not, / spending tokens? So let's jump in. We talked about this the other day when we did the spotlight video as far as spotlights, caches, tier list, etc. Annihilus the card. It costs 5 to use and it has 7 power. So the cost to power ratio is okay. Not amazing, not bad, pretty decent. The description is on reveal. Your cards with 0 or less power switch sides. Destroy those that can't. So like I mentioned the other day, you're going to want to use a lot of junk type stuff, throw things over to your opponent, not be stressed about using goblins because you'll be able to destroy them. But certain things we're going to look out for in this video that we'll mention at the end. Now, generally speaking, I think I like this card. I do think it, and I said this the other day as well, it seems to be maybe a little niche, but I think it can expand a little bit more than what people are giving it credit for. So we're going to look at some of those decks, but overall, I think solid card. So first deck we're going to look at, and I always want to give a shout out to Marvel Snap Zone whenever I do these videos. I love their tool builder or their deck builder. It's a great tool. Highly recommend checking it out. All of these decks are going to be linked in the description below. Okay, so first deck we got here, Annih Junk. Anyway, I like to combine the names of them. So in this one, generally speaking, it's just junk without stress. So you throw whatever you need to out there and you've got Annihilus and hope that, you know, someone might play a card in that lane this hand and fill it up and you won't be able to throw your goblin over. Well, you've got an Annihilus that you can eventually just destroy everything anyway. So what we've got to start off is the hood. We love the hood because it gives us a demon, which is 1/6, and eventually we'll be able to destroy our hood. No big deal. Nico, I've got in here because frankly, I just love Nico. She's very versatile. I wanted a little bit of low cost cards. She fit in nicely, so I've got her there to do a number of different things, frankly. Then we've got Black Widow. Black Widow just gives your opponent more junk. Also, it's not a bad card. It's kind of like whatever. You could throw it over if you want, but it's not an expensive card. Then we've got Viper, because we might want to throw over the hood. We'll jump over to having Sentry in our deck as well, because 410, 1 is a fantastic cost to power ratio. You get the Void, which maybe you're going to Viper across. All right, fine. We want to do that. So we've got our Viper there for that. I've thrown in Hazmat and Luke Cage in this one, mainly because I've got Debris. Debris throws all those blocks everywhere, those bricks, those rocks, etc. So there's more cards for you to ping and get negative on or throw over to your opponent. So it's kind of like, you know what? I like that. We've also got both sets of goblins with the Green Goblin and Hobgoblin, again, to throw over to your opponent without stressing. Then we've got Man-Thing to ping all of these rocks and things that we're throwing over. So it's like, this is perfect. I'm putting so much negative on my opponent. It's great. And then obviously we've got Annihilus. So if anything is still left on your side that you couldn't throw over, etc., then Annihilus should take it out. I like this one a lot. I think this is what you're going to see mostly with Annihilus, is these sort of junk things. You know, as far as I like to talk about alternates for that you would want to take out or bring in. I mentioned Carnage on my list, but I'm not sure that we need to stress about that anymore with Annihilus. It's like, get rid of Carnage. Get rid of anything you're worried about destroying. I mean, maybe I guess you could put it in there in case you don't draw Annihilus, but I don't know. He's a card that you could throw in there. Enchantress was another one I was debating, mainly because of the meta. Absorbing Man, Odin, Wong, just to have multiple on reveals with maybe Black Widow, Hazmat, etc. Even maybe do an Absorbing Man if you really wanted, but maybe that one might not be as strong. So a big fan of this first deck. The next deck we're going to look at here, we're going to call AnnihilHawk. These names, ridiculous. I can't help myself. So the idea here, very similar to the last one, but we're going to lean into Darkhawk as well, because I just think that there's some potential synergy there. Obviously, you don't need to stress about Annihilus destroying Darkhawk because his power will never be 0. But I think anytime you've got Black Widow and you're giving your opponent junk, you've got the opportunity to bring Darkhawk into that deck. That's it. So it's a combination between some of that junk, some of that Darkhawk, and getting Annihilus in there. So in case something stays on your side, you don't have to stress about it. I've already talked about the hood. We've got Corrigan and Rockslide, obviously, to go along with Darkhawk. Black Widow as well. We've got Zabu in this version because Zabu helps with any of those 4-cost cards. Right now, I have Mystique in here. I have to admit, that's a card that I would first take out. We'll get to that in a second, but she's something that you could potentially only copy Darkhawk with, right? Or Zabu, I guess, but you're never going to do that. So you could if you wanted to, or maybe you would. I don't know. And then we've got Debris, again, junking up your opponent's side. We've already talked about Darkhawk and Rock Slide. Absorbing Man is fantastic for potentially using after Korg, after Rock Slide, after Debris, after Hood. There's a lot of options there that you could do with Absorbing Man. You could even do it with Annihilus if you really wanted. If, say, your opponent has Annihilus too and sends everything back, you're like, all right, well, you know what? I'm going to Absorbing Man and then send everything back again or destroy it. It'll work out fine. Sentry, you mentioned in the last deck, I think it's going to be a solid option where we're not going to have to stress about the Void as much anymore. And I do think Sentry is going to be a card that is going to get a lot more play. And then, of course, Hobgoblin and Annihilus. I think this could be a lot of fun. Again, the card that I'd probably take out is maybe Mystique and maybe add in Viper or Green Goblin. I think those might be a little bit more efficient for you. Getting Mystique to line up after Darkhawk and still being efficient with everything you got might be a little bit difficult, but I do like Mystique anytime you've got cards like Darkhawk or Devil Dinosaur in those decks. So for that reason, I had her in there. All right, so jumping to the next deck. This one is a little bit different, and I ended up just calling it Misery. I was thinking about trying to come up with a name, but the idea here with Misery is bring the Annoying Pain and Misery to your opponent and trash just all of their spots. Also, you've got Galactus and Alioth. So okay, so the cards in here. We've got a lot of them we already talked about. We've talked about the Hood, we've talked about Viper, we've talked about both Goblins, we've talked about Sentry, and we've talked about Annihilus. All right, so cards we've added to this. Well, we've got Galactus in here. Well, because I've got Galactus, I've got Forge to potentially give myself extra points. Okay, fine. I also, because I've got Galactus, don't mind Miss Marvel to give myself some additional points to a location, because with Galactus, you know, you've got to be winning to be able to go destroy it. So, okay, I want to do that. All right, now Viper, what if I've got something on the side that either doesn't go over, whether it's the Hood, or maybe it's an Electro, or something that I just want to throw to the other side? It's like, okay, but I also don't want to leave a card in that spot, so I've got Iron Fist. So the way you would do this is say you throw down Electro on 3, and then on 4, you play Iron Fist on one location, not where the Electro was, and then you play Viper on the Electro location, and then it throws the Electro over to your opponent and clears Viper out from that lane. And that might be a lane that maybe you're goblining up quite a bit. So it's like, okay, and then it allows you to potentially Galactus, and you're now limiting your opponent to playing just one card. So I like that a lot. Now you also have the option of Miss Marvel, like I mentioned. With Electro, that gives you the opportunity to Galactus then Alioth, which I also like. And anything that's not working out with your Sentry, your Hood, or your Goblins that don't go over, you've got Annihilus that can just destroy everything. So it's kind of like, okay. So I really like this one because I really do think it could cause your opponents a lot of misery. It's a few different paths. I'm going to be curious to see how this works. I'll be curious to hear what all my Galactus folks out there think about this. Comment below on this specific deck. Let me know if you think it's going to work or not. As far as alternates on this one, you could take out Electro Alioth, maybe put in, you know, the whole Debris, Hazmat, Luke Cage type concept if you really want. Obviously, you could take out Iron Fist under that situation maybe too. But you decide. I like this one. It's definitely one that I'm going to give a whirl once getting Annihilus. All right, next one here. RavAnnihilus. Anyway, this one's leaning towards Darkhawk. So the idea here is you want to use Ravana Renslayer to get your stuff out earlier. Maybe an Iron Man Mystique type situation here too, but you need to make sure you use them after Annihilus, because if you use them before Annihilus, he's going to throw them to the other side, and you don't want that to happen. You want to make sure you can get those. So that is very, very risky. I will say that, and I don't think I mentioned that earlier with the Mystique. So for all of those of you who maybe said it or commented at that point, yes, Mystique, you need to make sure that you're careful with that play, because if you're not copying a powered card, it won't work. So like in this case where you're copying an Iron Man, the powers are going to stay zero. So Annihilus would throw that to your opponent. So you want to make sure to save those for later. Iron Man should be 4, Mystique should be 2. Those are both cards you could lay down on turn 6. You could go a little bit more into junk with this if you wanted to, but I don't know. We're going to stay on the Darkhawk version. So again, we got our Darkhawk Rock Slide Korg package. Makes sense. We've got Ravana. Already talked about her. Because we've got Ravana, we've got Black Widow, Iron Man, and Mystique to get cheaper costs. Obviously, we've got Hobgoblin and Green Goblin also to get cheaper costs as well. It's a really good setup. We've added the Hood and Nico Monero because both cards are phenomenal, very versatile. Obviously, we've got Annihilus to destroy our Hood. Mainly, that's it. But if any of your goblins aren't going over, then it's something that you don't have to stress about. This one I'm a little bit more skeptical about, but I do think it could be fun. If you want to take anything out, I mean, you can maybe take your Mystiques out. Maybe throwing a debris that helps you with some of your Annihilus stuff throw over. It makes it feel a little bit more, I don't know, useful, I'd say. But that would be the one thing I would look at. Last but not least, we've got Miss Annihilus. This is one where I wanted to lean into sort of a Miss Marvel love that we've got going on with Annihilus. Again, we've got, obviously, Miss Marvel. We've got Ravana. So with Ravana, we're going to have Black Widow, Green Goblin, our Hobgoblin, and our Iron Man yet again. So again, remember, Iron Man has to be after Annihilus. With Miss Marvel and potentially Iron Man here, we've got Onslaught. I don't know if I love Onslaught at this point, but it is an option. I do like getting that on your Miss Marvel. I think it could be really solid. Now, we've also got Nico because, again, she's very flexible. And we've got Sentry because he's awesome in this. You really want to... to me, if you want to have Sentry in almost every single deck with Annihilus, as far as I'm concerned. You might want to have the backup with Viper in there just to make sure, but I think Annihilus is a no-brainer. And with Viper, again, the Hood. Anytime you're playing around with Iron Man, you've got a Hood. You can get some pretty solid doubles there. And that's pretty much it. I think that you're not going to have... I mean, in the cards, as far as having unique, you've only got 2 1s. You've got 3 2s. None of these should be moving, so you can have 1 in each lane. You've got 2 goblins that are going to go across anyway. You've got 2 4s, but only one of them, Miss Marvel's one of them. She's going to play mid, so this 4 is not going to do anything for you. You do have 2 5s, but just, again, don't put them in the same lane, and you've only got 1 6. So Miss Marvel should be able to ping both lanes regardless. That's one of the things I really like about this. Now, as far as cards to take out, I would consider maybe taking out Iron Man, maybe Onslaught, and think about maybe that Darkhawk Korg Rock Slide package. You know, you'd have to take out 1 more card. Maybe it's Nico that you'd take out. That's another option for you to potentially do. And of course, Debris fits in to almost all of these. So I wanted to talk about a couple key things with Annihilus. Now, there's 2 big ones, maybe 3 if you want to think about some of the stuff I said that I kind of alluded to. First one, don't get Cosmo. Your on reveal's huge. So you need to know where to play it. Play it smart, be careful with it. Other part is look out for armor. Armor could be a huge problem. So maybe Enchantress in some of these decks. I mentioned her earlier that she does help with the current meta. So maybe you have an Enchantress in there so that you don't get handcuffed by an armor, because that could be a big time problem. And then last, but already mentioned, I would say is that if you've got Iron Man type cards or Mystiques that are copying cards like Iron Man where they don't get the power but you want to keep them, think about your order. You got to make sure your Annihilus goes before you play your Iron Man Mystique type things. And I do think that those play lines can be decent. You just have to be smart about playing them late. Don't play them necessarily early, and they could lead to some pretty nice surprise wins. So I'd say that. Now, again, I guess this is technically the last, and I mentioned this one earlier, but there could be a lot of mirror matchups. So make sure that you're thinking about that. Think about priority. Who's going to go first? If you throw all of your junk over there, and then they just throw it right back, and you've already used your Annihilus, you're SOL. You're not gonna be able to do anything about it, and you're stuck. So that's something to think about. Right now, let's decide, should we be opening or not? I had this graphic in the video from the other day, and I will say again, I feel comfortable having Annihilus in this save for / solid category. I originally had him in good niche, but I moved him up. If you want to check out the full graphic, check out the video from the other day. I think he's going to be a card that's just straight going to be pretty solid. Obviously, in this one, he's a 5'8", but I think even at 5'7", it feels pretty good. I think he's going to be solid. If they nerf him any more than that, I will say it's going to be sort of... I mean, maybe 5'6" might still be okay. So maybe he'll get a little OTA nerf in the future. But even with that, I think he's going to do what you're going to want him to do regardless. The other 2 cards in this dock in an X23, they're okay. But I think... it is safe and okay to be able to pull for Annihilus this week. I think it's a solid, good card. I think on top of that, if you want to use tokens, he's Series 5. That makes me a little bit more sensitive. I mean, I like to use my spotlights on Series 5 cards versus tokens on my Series 5 cards, because I like to use all my tokens on Series 4 cards. So, and I've got a decent stockpile. I think I've got about 14 or 15 spotlights built up, and I've had a couple 4 uses on those. So this is where I'm at. I think Annihilus is going to be a fun card. It's a little niche, but I also think it's a really fun card that can go in some other groups, and it's going to expand the junk archetype a little bit. I don't think it's going to be just junk. I think Annihilus helps you expand junk into other archetypes, which is going to make for some good fun mesh decks, which is what we tried to do in this video. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Let me know any decks that you think you're going to maybe play, how you change the decks that I have in this video. Until next time, we hope you have a wonderful day.